All right, this video is for those of you that have been through an awakening, or you're not sure if you had one, or maybe you're having one right now. And maybe this video found you because you're in the midst of an awakening and you need this confirmation to know that you're on the right path because awakenings are not something that one does on purpose. An awakening happens as a result of a painful ending to many things that were once part of your reality. I'm sure we've all heard the term rude awakening. I don't know of many happy or joyous awakenings. They all seem to be pretty brutal. You start to open up to realizations about the people in your life, the work you've been doing, this world that you live in, and the truths about yourself. In this video, I'm going to talk a lot about my perspective of the awakening process. And I'm also going to give you some signs that you're having an awakening, that you're going through one right now. But that won't come until the end. First, I want to discuss the awakening and my perspectives about it based on my own experience and what I know from other people that I've worked with. Because an awakening is followed after many things coming to an end. It might lead to many things coming to an end, but you haven't yet woken up as things are unfolding, which for some people might land them in what is called a dark night of the soul. This is what the mainstream healthcare system would call depression. But in the spiritual world, there is a purpose to this so-called depression. It's an understandable response to what's happening in your life. It's also a necessary time for you to experience and go through. Instead of medicating it, we learn how to meditate on it. What I have noticed is that some people will go through this dark night at a very early age and become attached to it because they do not know what it is. So it becomes them. They become a dark knight. Someone who thinks they must always put up a fight and must always carry a sword and never be truly happy in life, thinking that to be happy is a lost cause for them now. Everyone else is happy, but I have had such a hard time that I don't know what it means to truly be happy. They succumb to the depression. They become numb to the depression. And those who have had this dark night meet them at a young age without the spiritual, intuitive level of knowing how this pain could lead to something great, they will become rocks. They will become hard and without emotional response, except for anger and resentment, and live a very frustrated life. Or they will become sponges. They will become soft and further perpetuate their suffering at their own hand. Very unconsciously, of course. Because an awakening is equivalent to a rise in consciousness. But without knowing that this dark period is going to lead or have the capacity to lead to a rise in consciousness, they may seek a rise in something else. They might likely be the ones who turn to the drink or the drug to give them pleasure in life. Or they turn to relationships or work to fuel a sense of purpose, because otherwise they're unknowingly still stuck in this dark place, thinking that's where they're going to be forever. So I better find a way out through working, through relationships, or through numbing myself. Even the drink and the drug do no good in offering them a rise in consciousness. Instead, it gets them further away. For those of us who are spiritually connected, we can go back into our earlier years and pinpoint that first dark night visiting us. It could have been a time in our lives when we felt like an outcast, or when we felt helpless, alone, and afraid of our own existence, being misunderstood, being shoved aside. For someone who is spiritually connected, they would know that this was a time to seek meaning in some way. Having an existential crisis unleashes the seeker from within to find the meaning behind the darkness, which later has them arrive at their awakening. What may have been called a rude awakening is now seen as the great awakening. But as a child and teenager experiencing dark times, I would go into those dark corners and I'd write about it. I'd dance about it. I'd sing about it. And then I'd also want to forget about it. Because in fact, it is a hard place to be in. And some of us like the pain. Sometimes we seek out the pain as a way to grow deeper awareness of the meaning behind our existing pain. Because this isn't painful enough. Let me find some more suffering that I can learn from. The thing is that spiritual seekers are not afraid of pain because they know it's only temporary. And they embrace it as a tool towards new levels of conscious awakenings. Imagine you've been seeing the world through a peephole your whole life, and then one day someone comes along and punches a hole in your door. So many things are brought into view now that you didn't see before, but you may not want to see them. You may want to patch up those holes and make your door the way it once was. But a seeker will be very intrigued by what has been opened up. There may be some fear and anxiety, yes, but the spiritual seeker understands that this has happened for them at just the right moment to show them what needed to be seen or to confirm what they may have already have known. Now their perceptions are broadened. Truths are revealed. This is an awakening, but only if it's accepted and integrated. If there is an attempt to quickly patch it up and ignore what was seen, then one will stay in the dark and remain in denial of what really is. This can lead one to live a very closed and limiting life, and thus they would not be considered a seeker. But what if you did want to know more? What if you did want to open your mind and clear away the old that was no longer serving you, but it kept hanging on? It kept following you no matter how hard you tried. Then, this, I would say, is what it means to be attached to suffering. There is a problem with the ego that hasn't yet been realized. And the awakening in this case needs to be the ego that has been running the show. It is the great humbling aspect of the awakening. And what one would need to awaken to is not the lies that other people have been telling them or the false perceptions they've been having about the realities in their outer world, but the false perceptions about who they are. Some may have such a well-established ego from the earlier years that they just can't decipher the difference between their ego and their higher self. They are on their high horse, staying in the dark night of the soul, wondering why nothing is changing. They do not have access to their higher self because their ego is so completely in the way. The ego is casting such a large shadow on their higher self that it can't even be seen. It doesn't seem to exist. They may be someone who thinks they have such great compassion and empathy for others, but they're unable to give themselves the same compassion and empathy. Well, then, this is a problem with the ego to have such a thought, because the awakening would reveal to them, in fact, that their empathy and compassion for others was fake. Because it was a wounded capacity to share such things with another when one lacked that within themselves. And that's fine, that will happen. But the awakening in this case will be the most painful to experience, to know that one has been living a life this whole time from their wounded ego state. It's true that the less your ego is in charge, the more likely you are to experience an awakening. But to open up to yourself, your shadow, your limiting beliefs can only be done from a higher self point of view. Each time you wake up, your ego has to take a back seat. It's a humbling experience to go through, especially when it has to do with waking up to yourself and your own lies. because you may have lost it all. You may have been brought down to your weakest moment, and the true awakening is revealed when you understand how it is that you got yourself to that place. We can have awakenings after being misled by religion, politics, marriage, relationships, and so on. But let's face it, the greatest awakening is had after realizing you have been misleading yourself. Again, it's a very humbling experience. And not many will go there because they will stay in protection. They will stay in their awakenings that are comfortable for them to experience. But the realist, the truest of the spiritual seekers, will wake up to their own lies. And that will be the most painful of them all, especially if they are the ones who have been seeking pain, self-sabotaging their success. This will lead ultimately to the most beautiful beginning of all. This may very well lead to the final awakening, the greatest awakening that you could ever imagine. Yes, you've had your first awakening. Well, this is the final awakening from your ego that now opens you up to all truth, all experience, all enlightenments for once and for all. You have transcended your ego, your suffering, your despair, your pain. Those things no longer exist for you now. You have reached the highest level of acceptance on your path. And now, no matter what lies ahead, you go at it from your highest truth. You no longer meet challenge from your ego. Yes, the ego is still there, but you're able to tame it. Your ego knows that it's no longer the one in charge. And that is such a wonderful thing for the ego because it's been working so hard for so long that you relieve the ego from its pain and suffering as well. Some may experience a natural awakening, one that is not found in pain, but from meditation, mindfulness, connection to plants or animals, including plant medicine, which is why we will have many periods of awakening in our life. So to say you've had your one and only awakening, well, I'll tell you, there's more. And each one is different, each one offering more and more space for you to expand your consciousness. It doesn't always have to be brought on by such inner turmoil, near-death experience, or existential crisis. Sometimes it can feel like a reconnection instead of a disconnection. And on the path to spiritual awakening, you are hungry for information. You might have a period of time where you are consuming many spiritual texts or going on your own spiritual journeys and experiencing an increase in spiritual practices. Maybe you pick up your first tarot or oracle deck. Perhaps you go on a spiritual retreat or you take a solo camping trip with the intention of growing your consciousness. Think of someone who has just gotten out of a toxic relationship and they discover their partner was a narcissist. This is a rude awakening. What do? They read and they watch everything available about narcissistic people. A whole new world opens up for them that they had no idea about before. This is often what has led many people that I work with to their awakening. And oftentimes their awakening can be had while in my one-on-one transformational coaching because they are given permission to do this exploration. They're given all of the information people usually find on their journey right there in one place, all within a few months. Someone who has just discovered that each and every unique way of being from their partner matches every single descriptor of a narcissistic person. They get to understand what trauma bonds are. They find out about the flying monkeys, the triangulation. They learn how to be a gray rock. And had they not had this experience, they'd have no clue what any of those terms meant. It's opened up a whole new world. Their peephole has just turned into a huge glass door. Their world is shaken. They can't believe it. They have found out the truth about someone else. That is an awakening for them. But now they must discover the truth about themselves. What is my shadow? What is that part in me that got me to this place? And that is a whole nother leg of the journey. Because as easy it is in your awakening to find fault in others, as mentioned, the hardest part of your healing journey will be when it comes time to find the faults within yourself. And to be able to do that without judgment of yourself, but with pure love and compassion and acceptance of all of those dark parts about you. Now, here are a few of the physical, emotional, mental symptoms that one can expect when they're going through an awakening. And remember, this can happen many times, and the awakening can last for various lengths of time. Depending on how big of a shift in your consciousness it has the potential to bring forth. First of all, you're going to experience increased sensitivity. Things seem brighter, louder. You're more sensitive emotionally and physically. If you are someone who calls yourself an empath, then I'm sure you were born already with a higher state of consciousness than most. So the increase in sensitivity for you has already been with you since you can remember, since the day you were born. And it really can't get much more. But for someone who all of a sudden is noticing how they are more sensitive than they've ever been, then this awakening for them may now deem them to be someone who is cultivating the intuitive empathic abilities. They now have an appreciation for nature and animals where they didn't much before. Meanwhile, as I've mentioned, some of us are already born with this. So keep that in mind in terms of being an awakened child who has gone on to experience deeper levels of awakening since. And on this note, one of the levels of your awakening will be towards having emotional boundaries for yourself. You will wake up to what your sensitivity is here to teach you. You will wake up to how your overly empathic nature may not have been serving you. So if you haven't had the awakening specifically as an empath and your gift just yet, then I hope one day soon it will be on its way. The second thing are lucid dreams. Have you had dreams where you knew you were dreaming? It's interesting to consider the types of dreams you have as a form of awakening. I'd propose that this is because your third eye is opening. The third eye is your intuition, your insight, and your higher state of consciousness. What you can see when you enter into your subconscious sleep state can become conscious. And that in and of itself is a sign of integration with your higher self. Experiencing astral projection during sleep or even meditation is a great indicator of your consciousness rising, as is having remote viewing abilities. This is your clairvoyant skill. And as we all ascend, so do our intuitive and clair abilities. Next are synchronicities. Whether these are simultaneous events happening close together, seeing repeating numbers, hearing songs with lyrics speaking things you've already said, just thinking about something and then it happens. For those of us who have experienced these things, it's more than just an 11:11 on the clock. But for the newbies to the rise in consciousness, that might be one of the first things you'd likely start to see. Any repeating numbers for that matter. Like every time you look at the clock, it's 4:44 and you wake up at 4:44. Or your battery always seems to be on 33% or 77% every time you notice. It's a sign you're on the right path. You're tuning into the ethereal world. Sometimes it can get a bit annoying always seeing these things, but it's also a nice reminder to keep going. This is probably one of the most beautiful aspects of the awakening are these synchronistic events Are these signs from source, from your angel guides, whatever you want to announce them to be? Gives you that reassurance and that comfort, knowing that everything's going to be okay. The fourth thing you might experience is extreme peace and calm. Your world could be crumbling around you, but you feel so calm. If you were once very anxious, all of that is gone now. Enjoy it. This is one of the great aspects of the awakening journey because you are integrating with the one, the all-knowing, the divine spirit, your true self that is safe. For people with complex trauma, feeling this state of peace is also a sign in your awakening journey of the healing that is taking place. Your nervous system feels safe to relax. You can congratulate yourself on the hard work you've been doing up until this point. Meanwhile, you might feel a little bit out of this world, disillusioned, dissociated, out of body, like you're in a dream, but awake and aware. Is any of this real? You're in between timelines, if you will. You are in between realities of the one you left and the one you're so close to entering. It can feel unsettling, and this can feel a little bit worrisome. But again, it's the in-between. So keep looking forward to your new reality with confidence and assuredness. Physical aches and pain is another one. As your body is going through an integration, there's so much happening energetically within your physical body as it's going through this spiritual awakening. The next thing you might notice on your awakening is loneliness. This is a big one. And this is another one like the increased sensitivity. You may have felt like this your whole life to a certain degree. And come to think of it, you may have felt all of these things I've already spoken about your whole life. So that's an indicator that you are someone who has an ongoing commitment to growing consciousness. You're probably someone that would be referred to as a light worker or a starseed. It is your soul mission to increase not only your own conscious awareness, but the consciousness of the collective. This is your purpose and mission here. So it can feel very unrelenting for many years at a time because you are doing the heavy lifting. So if you're feeling alone and lonely, it's important to know that you're not alone. There are other people on this great mission as well. So don't give up. You might feel like you can't connect to many people on a deep level. Your need to be understood by others is often ignored. So it's important for you to have the depth of understanding about who you are and what your mission is here on Earth. Feeling isolated is only a temporary state until you reach the next awakened state of consciousness where your isolation is transcended into peaceful solitude. This may take several awakenings to reach. Finally, one last thing that you may expect to happen on your path of awakening is a spiritual ego. We've all been there. The first awakening we were aware of led us to believe that we were better than those unawake people. You are no better. You are no worse. They just are. Being judgmental about where others are means you still have work to do. Yes, you will have the separation from people like this, but once you drop the ego view of it all, your higher self knows that everyone is on their own timeline. Respect them all. They're here for a reason. And sometimes that reason is to teach you the next lesson in your journey. One last thing about this awakening process is that you will leave a lot behind. The more and more you find yourself, the more and more you will find yourself alone. Let's talk more about that in the next video. Waking up alone.